it from our brother, our doctor, our national representative, who I would like to call forth at this time. Dr. Alim, would you come forth? And I wish everyone would give him not just your undivided attention, but give him your heart and your mind. Assalamu alaikum.
In the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful, the All-Wise, the True, and the Living God, the Lord of the worlds, the God who self-created himself and brought forth from himself all living things, the God of the beginning, the God of the ending, the God of that which is between the beginning and the ending, the God of truth, the God who has manifested truth to his created humanity, created in his own image and after his own likeness, who revealed truth to us through Moses and Jesus and Muhammad and all of the messengers and prophets and servants that have been sent to every nation. And we are pleased to acknowledge that Allah has blessed us, the black man and woman of America, with a messenger from himself, a perfect leader, teacher, and guide. As a matter of fact, he doubled up on it and gave us two of them. One being the most honorable Elijah Muhammad, and the other being the Honorable Louis Farrakhan, and made them like two arrows shot from the same bow, the target being the hearts and the minds of our people all over the earth. And those arrows shot from the same bow, the two messengers of the present day and hour, have not missed the mark, but they have struck the hearts and the minds of black people all over the globe, and now you see the general resurrection of our people taking place. So in the name of that great God and in the name of all that is righteous and all that is true, let me offer to you the greeting words of peace as we say it in Arabic, Assalamu alaikum. And to all of you who are here this evening, I want to say to you that I am very happy to be able to join in this scientific convocation. I'm very proud and happy to know that our people are interested enough in their condition, in their lives, in their futures, to convene a meeting not for the purpose of having a party, not for some frivolous purpose, but for an exalted purpose, which is to demonstrate the knowledge that we have acquired concerning a problem that afflicts our community, and to present to the community some of the scholars that we have produced. I'm sorry that my schedule had to be changed at the last moment so that I wasn't here to listen to the other scholars who presented before me. But I'm very proud and happy to know that the proceedings are on tape. And that means that what was said before has been preserved and can be listened to over and over and over and over again. I don't think that the conveners of this conference, Brother Reginald and others, Brother Wazir and Brother Johnny 2X and the others that have been integral in organizing and putting on this conference, you should not look on the success of this conference on numbers alone. After all, this is a scientific meeting. How many people do you know of that are interested in scientific pursuits? But we can't measure the value or the success of an endeavor based on the number of people that are present. We know how to fill up an auditorium like this. All we got to do is get a band. All we have to do is get some dancers. All we have to do is get funky and low down, and we will fill it to the rafters. We know how to fill it up. But I'm just so proud that we are developing a culture now that is scientific, that is serious, that is problem-oriented. And I'm proud that we have in the city of Long Beach a bookstore. I haven't been by the bookstore, but any man or any woman that would set up a bookstore in the midst of the community, that's the best friend you have. That's someone that is giving to you the greatest gift that could be given, and that is knowledge, wisdom, and understanding. Our Savior Allah, Master Farad Muhammad, said to us, anything that you need to know is written down in a book. And that's why the white man prevented us from learning how to read and prevented us from having books, and then turned us off in the educational process to the reading of books so that we would remain ignorant and blind, deaf, and dumb, so he could continue to use us as a tool and a slave. So I'm happy this evening. I don't know about you. I'm happy to be here. All praise is due to Allah. I think, though, before we go any further, I would like for everyone to rise. Let us pause for a moment of silence in memory of our departed brother, Miles Dewey Davis, who passed today in the city of Santa Monica. And he means a lot to me, and I'm sure he means a lot to all of us. So let us give a silent meditation. May Allah be pleased with him. We can be seated. We want to not repeat what may have already been said. I'm very proud to have heard the little that I did here, and I'm proud that everywhere I go around the world, that black people are waking up. I was in London a few weeks ago, and I was very, very proud that the brothers and sisters that greeted me in London, they said that we heard your tape on AIDS, and we play it over and over and over, and it's a big hit in England. And I would say that of all of the lectures that I have ever given over the years, having represented Minister Louis Farrakhan for 10 years, the lecture that seems to have done the most good is a lecture that I hate to give. And that is the one entitled AIDS and Black Folks, or also AIDS Kills Blacks. I was persuaded and goaded into doing some research on the subject of AIDS and black folks in February of 1987 by a good friend of mine in Washington named John Ray, who's the president of the Majestic Eagles, a business association. And John kept coming to me saying, Brother Alim, what about AIDS? What about AIDS? I said, John, that's something, for white folks to worry about. He kept coming back, no, black people are dying like flies. I said, John, where'd you get that from? Sexuals get that. I know some drug addicts that got that. He said, no, you got to look into this. You got to look into this. Our people are dying. And so realizing that he was very, very serious and realizing that he had been right about so many things before, I started to look into it. And the more I began to look into what was taking place with AIDS, the more I realized that my friend was right. That there were more black people dying of AIDS than any other people. Even though when you turned on your TV set then and now, the only ones they like to show you are white people dying of AIDS. Just this week they showed a poor white woman from Florida who had been infected by her dentist. And they showed her delivering a 20-minute speech before Congress because that's all the strength that she had, was just 20 seconds to give a message to the lawmakers concerning what they need to do to make it mandatory for healthcare workers to be tested for AIDS. But that is good as far as it goes, but it hides the reality that it is black women who are most affected by the deadly AIDS virus, that black women are 13 times as likely as a white woman to have AIDS. And that in most of the largest cities on the East Coast, and I assume here on the West Coast as well, it is the leading cause of death in young black women. I found that the projection is by the year 2000 that blacks will be the #1 victims of AIDS, that in absolute numbers we will absolutely outnumber whites in terms of being victims of AIDS. In Africa, we find that between 30 and 40 million black Africans, not sexuals, not drug addicts, but ordinary African men and women are walking around today infected with a virus that is likely to cause their death before the next century. This is the kind of information that was contained in those lectures that I was blessed by Allah to give in 1987. But when you recite those kinds of statistics and you begin to lay out the scenario that in all likelihood, whether we can come up with definitive proof or not, in all likelihood, AIDS is not a natural occurrence, but the AIDS virus is a made biological thing. It is an instrument of genocide to carry out the agenda of the likes of George Bush. Since that time, documents have been released from the National Security Council archives that show that as early as 1969, George Bush had already instituted activities that are genocide in their implications. It was George Bush who was the freshman congressman from Texas who invited Jensen and Shockley to address Congress, to provide Congress with their eugenics message of the inferiority of dark-skinned people. And it was George Bush who rose to his feet on the floor of Congress, warning his colleagues in the government of the genetic downbreeding of the American population due to the increase in the population of blacks and Hispanics. And he recommended that a task force be set up, and he set it up to study the implications of worldwide population growth on the national security of the United States. And this was done, it was authorized by President Richard Nixon and completed under President Gerald Ford, because you know what happened to Nixon. He didn't finish out his term because he got involved in corruption, but he was smart enough to appoint Gerald Ford as his vice president after his first vice president, Spiro T. Agnew, also got hounded out of office due to corruption. Right. And he was very wise to appoint Gerald Ford, who was his cousin, or is his cousin, so that the very first thing that Gerald Ford was able to do when he assumed the presidency was to pardon his cousin Richard Nixon for any wrongdoing done in Watergate. Right. Of course, what you must also realize is that Gerald Ford and Richard Nixon are cousins, related by blood, but they're also related to Danforth Quayle, the present vice president, and George Herbert Walker Bush, the present president of the United States. And so what we see is that this is a family affair. You wondering why Bush would name a milk toast like Quayle? It's because it's his cousin. And they are related by blood to 9 other recent American presidents, related to President Kennedy, related to FDR, related to a total of 9. Well, why are you mentioning this in your lecture about AIDS? Because I want you to understand that there is a struggle that is going on our planet. It is a struggle over who will rule. It is a struggle over who will control the natural resources. And we have been programmed by the educational institutions to think in terms of governments and to think in terms of ideologies like communism or democracy. Will communism win out over democracy and freedom? But in reality, the way in which the game is played at the highest levels is not about governments, it's not about ideologies, it's about family. And the same families that rule in the world today are the same families that ruled in ancient Rome and ancient Greece. And so the ruling families in America are related to the ruling families in England, which are related to the ruling families in the Netherlands and Spain and Portugal and France and Germany. It's all family. And they don't care anything at all about democracy or communism. All they care about is continuing their power to rule. They sell you and me when we attend university and college. They sell you and me on the idea of being a rugged individualist who is able to think for self. And don't let mama, don't let daddy, don't let brother, don't let sister, don't let preacher, don't let nobody tell you what to do, child. You got to think for yourself. You got to look out for number one. This is what they teach us. Because they know that isolated, alienated individuals are no match for organized families. Is that right? Brother was telling me that they just had an auction here in California a few days ago where they auctioned off Sammy Davis Jr.'s estate. I think the IRS claimed he owed back taxes. Yes, sir. I don't know what the details are, but the idea is the man who gave so much died broke. He made all this money while he was with us, and then after he's gone, before his body's even cold in the ground, they have come after all of the wealth, all of the accumulated possessions, and I guess by now they've taken everything that is there. Well, where's the Rat Pack? Where's Frank? Where's Dino? See, but Sammy never really was a part of the family, was he? That's why no matter what the vastness of his personal fortune was or seemed to be, it can't be held on to without the institution of strong family. power, and wealth, knowledge, wisdom, and understanding are passed down from generation to generation through the mechanism of family.
That's right.
If someone wishes to perpetuate their rule on the earth, they have to protect their family's interests. If someone can destroy the foundation of family power, family wealth, family knowledge, family tradition, family values, then even if they have to tolerate your existence during your generation, yet they know that they'll get you in the next generation or the next generation after that. And ultimately that they will prevail in the earth over you. Are you listening?
Yes, sir.
See, we have to analyze what has happened to us in terms of family. And we have to analyze what needs to be done by us in terms of family. Because it is one of the aims of slavery to have broken up our families, to destroy our family structure so that we are weak in the earth, and when they are tired of us and have no further use of us, then they can destroy us in one generation. And this is what is going on. This is what's planned by the likes of George Bush. Not just for you and I here in America, but all over the world. So President Nixon authorized a commission. Gerald Ford became president and received the commission's report that was authored by Henry Kissinger, Brent Scowcroft. And by this time, of course, George Bush was then the director of the CIA. He had just finished putting Noriega on the CIA payroll. He had just authorized the shipment, 70 shipments of cocaine out of Colombia through Panama City into actually a Green Beret military base in the United States. And of course, nobody could see what this was all about, but this was the setup that would bring cocaine wholesale into the streets of America. At that time, remember, cocaine was considered to be a rich man's drug. But we've lived to see in the decade of the 80s going into the 90s, now cocaine has become the poor man's drug. Affordable even by children. And in a purified form now that is virtually addicting at first use. This was planned. Or did you think it just happened? This was planned. Say, well, Brother Muhammad, are you subscribing to the conspiracy theory? Oh, you bet your bottom dollar I am. How could all of this happen unless it was a concerted, coordinated plan carried out over a period of time by many, many individuals? And under the Freedom of Information Act, we have had the release of certain documents that prove the point. This study that was commissioned by Nixon and released under Ford and participated in by Kissinger and CIA Director George Bush, it was entitled The Implications of Worldwide Population Growth to United States Foreign Interests. It detailed 13 nations whose populations were growing at such a rapid pace that it seemed to threaten American power. They mentioned Iraq. They mentioned Bangladesh, Pakistan, India, China, the Philippines, Ethiopia, Egypt, Nigeria, Brazil, Colombia, Mexico, and Malaysia. That's 13, I think. They also mentioned the Palestinians, but they were mentioned separately because they are not considered officially to be a nation. They pointed out that Brazil is the biggest African nation outside of Africa. that at that time, in 1974, she had a population that was approaching 100 million, and that by the year 2035, the population of Brazil would be greater than the population of the United States. And the pace at which Brazil was industrializing and utilizing the vast natural resources in the Amazon River, that sometime by the middle of the 21st century, Brazil, a black African nation, this is the language that they used, would become the center of economic and political power in the Western Hemisphere, supplanting America. They said much the same thing about Nigeria, whose population was estimated to be about 70 million at the time of this report. And they said that by mid-21st century, Nigeria would become a superpower on the African continent in its own right, and that Nigeria was especially dangerous because they had an educated, industrious population and a strong military. They said Nigeria might begin to exert its influence as a superpower over the flow of natural resources out of Africa, and might decide that these resources would be better used for the development of Africa rather than to enhance the development of Europe and America. Are you listening?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
They said the same thing about Iraq. That with the oil wealth in Iraq and the high level of education in Iraq and the burgeoning population of Iraq, that they were going to become the regional superpower and overshadow their ally Israel. And so out of this study, released in 1974, late 73, 74, they formulated a policy of world population reduction. Are you listening?
Yes, sir.
Under Jimmy Carter, the plan was extended in a report that was called Global 2000. And the reason that they called it Global 2000 was that they intended to produce a global reduction in population of 2.7 billion people by the year 2000. Are you listening?
Yes, sir.
This is the grinning peanut farmer from Georgia. They're supposed to be the friend to black folks. He's the one that they show you on TV. He's building a house for some poor black person. He's swinging a hammer.
Right. Go on.
But his policies are responsible for much of the homelessness that we have all over America and the wretched conditions that you have in Africa and Latin America. Because when he was president, he could have, with the stroke of a pen, he could have seen to it that millions of houses were constructed. But he wants to show himself to be a good Christian because he's swinging a hammer helping one house to be constructed, when his basic underlying policies were indistinguishable from the policies of Nixon and Ford before him. And he set the stage for Reagan and Bush to come in full scale with their genocidal policy against the third world. Now, why are you saying all of these things? Because I want to create the backdrop in which we need to be thinking about this AIDS epidemic. You shouldn't think that it's just something that came out of the blue, or that it's just it's something that exists apart from other factors. I want you to understand that white folks have an agenda. And their agenda, as articulated by President Carter, is that we want to reduce the world's population by 2.7 billion people. We want to cause their death by war, by famine, by pestilence, by disease. And since there is no natural disease that is sufficient to produce death on this scale, then the wicked scientists of America, in the Soviet Union, in South Africa, in Israel, conspired together to produce a biological that is death made perfect. It's a perfect weapon that once it touches any individual, then that individual, you might as well just write a certificate.
Just leave the date blank until we know for certain. So they plan a plan, and Allah plans a plan. And Allah is the best of planners. I used to go around preaching that in 1987. And a lot of people preach it. I'm not saying I was the first one to say such things, nor the last one, nor the most accurate in my information. But I am very, very gratified today to know that there's so many people who believe that. You can't hardly go anywhere and talk to any black person today who doesn't believe in the so-called conspiracy theory. They all believe in it. They all believe that white folks is out to kill us. And they're not wrong, because we have the documented evidence that that in fact is their agenda. And the architect, even though there's many people involved in it, one of the primary architects of this agenda is the present president of the United States, George Bush. So the war carried out against Iraq is not to be misunderstood. It's not really a vendetta against one man. It's a vendetta against the whole population. And so the sanctions against Iraq are sanctions that are designed to bring about the wholesale of millions of people. They killed 500,000 outright through military action, and now they are starving about 5 million of Iraq's children, because they know that's the most vital part of the population, the children. That's the future. You and I sing a song. We want to save the children, save the babies, because we know they are the future. Well, you think you're the only one that knows that? These devils know that too. And that's why their target is not so much the older people. Their target is the younger people. And their favorite weapons today are drugs and sex. Because through drugs and sex, then they can introduce a deadly biological agent called, and you know all about that, right? You know all about the biology. I'm sure Dr. Jordan and others that spoke today, they told you all about that. So you know that from A to Z, you know about how people can get infected with AIDS, how it's spread, how it's transmitted, the clinical course. And of course, everybody knows, even the most ignorant among us knows, that the clinical outcome of every single case that has been documented of AIDS has been uniform death until now. Until now. All praise is due to Allah. Minister Farrakhan listened to the lecture I gave in 1987, I think May the 5th in Chicago, on AIDS. And he said, brother, he said, that was a brilliant lecture. He said, but brother, you have to give the people more hope. He said, you left them with no hope at all. I said, but brother Farrakhan, I don't see no hope. He said, brother, it's got to be some hope. I said, brother Farrakhan, all I can do is say what I know to say. And I don't see any hope. And so I didn't want to disobey Minister Farrakhan and preach in a way that didn't give people hope. So I stopped preaching that subject. After that, anytime somebody came to me and said, brother, we want you to talk on AIDS, I said, well, go get my tape. I'll talk on anything, but I won't talk on that, because I don't like to deprive people of hope. And I'm not going to lie to them and create some false hope. So I won't say anything on that subject at all. Let the other people talk about it. I won't talk about it.
Then, of course, one of my patients who was HIV positive, he came to me about a year ago. He said, Dr. Muhammad, what about Cameron? I said, what about it? He said, well, do you think that that's something good? I said, I don't know anything about it. He said, well, could you check? You know how doctors are sometimes. Have you ever dealt with doctors? See, it's the way we're educated. They make you think that you know everything. And if somebody's trying to tell you something that's not another doctor, then you sort of, oh, well, you know, all right, I'll tolerate this, but make it quick. You're not qualified to teach me anything. But he was persistent. See, I have good patience. He was persistent with his dumb doctor. And so he kept bringing me little pieces of information concerning Cameron. And then finally I said, okay, I'm going to check this out. So I started calling people. I even called, he gave me Dr. Jordan's number. I even called Dr. Jordan, trying to get information. Call this one, call that one, call that one. And everybody that was supposed to have information about Cameron, either I couldn't get in touch with them, or when I did get in touch with them, the information that they had, you know, really wasn't good information. And I had to keep telling my patient, say, well, I really can't recommend something that I don't have scientific information about. I can't make a change, you know, that affects your life and the outcome of your life just based on what somebody is saying. This one is saying this and this one's saying that, but nobody is showing me any scientific evidence to base the decision upon. And so finally I got some information from the Kenyan embassy. And again, it was just anecdotal information, a newspaper report, but it contained certain scientific facts that were compelling. Compelling enough that I went to Chicago and I said to Minister Farrakhan, I said, there's something to this Cameron. I said, I don't know really what it is, and I'm having great difficulty finding out about Cameron. He said, so what do you want to do, brother? You want to go to Kenya? I said, yes, sir. He said, well, brother, you go then and bring us back the actual facts. Find out whether it's true, find out whether it's false, but our people need to know the actual facts. And I'll send with you someone from the Final Call newspaper who will document your findings. I said, yes, sir. And so Brother Alim Muhammad, the editor of the Final Call newspaper, and myself went to Nairobi, Kenya. We contacted the Kenyan Medical Research Institute, that's called KEMRI, and the principal researcher, Dr. Davy Koesh. And we got permission to visit, and we received permission to interview Dr. Koesh concerning his findings. So I want to talk a little bit today about personalities. It relates to how few people are in the audience tonight. That whole question, how many people do there have to be in order for something good to come out of it? Sometimes I get confused. Sometimes I start off talking like a doctor and then I end up talking like a preacher. And I'm changing hats. So you just try to keep up with me, because I'm switching back and forth, and I hope you don't get confused, and I hope I don't get confused. I don't think I will, because it's all the same thing. See, because good religion and good science are the same thing. There's no contradiction between the spiritual and the scientific. If you have the right science, then it corresponds with the right spiritual teaching or philosophy. As the Honorable Elijah Muhammad gave it to us, he said, Islam is mathematics and mathematics is Islam. You can't say it any clearer than that. He had to tell us that because we had been given religion that made us irrational. If you don't believe that religion sometimes makes people irrational, you go visit the local church tomorrow morning and watch the people go crazy on cue.
Right.
And if they said and did the same thing that they do in the church on Sunday morning, if they did that on Monday morning, they would lock them up. Put them in a straitjacket, says she's crazy. But if they do it in church, it's okay, it's understood that this is an induced psychosis. When I joined the Nation of Islam in 1968, I was a poet. I wanted to be a poet. Nothing wrong with that. But when I got exposed to the teachings of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, his emphasis was on science and technology and nation building. And after a while, I began to realize that I didn't have to be in college to learn how to write poems or recite poetry. I began to realize that that was just something natural and inherent. I didn't have to pay white folks $5,000 a year and get some degree in literature in order to be a poet, to be artistic, to have some kind of creative expression. I didn't have to do that. But if I wanted to help the Honorable Elijah Muhammad build the nation, I couldn't build the nation with poetry. I love poetry. I love the rap artists of today. But I'm just saying it takes more than that to actually build a nation. We're giving in our lessons the need for engineering because engineers are people who build things. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad asked us the question, who is the original man? He said the original man is the Asiatic black man, the maker, the owner, the cream of the planet Earth, God of the universe. But the first characteristic of the original man, he's the maker. He knows how to make something. He knows how to make what he needs in order to live. He knows how to make food, clothing, shelter, transportation, health care. He knows how to build a school. He knows how to build a city, build a dam, build a nuclear reactor, build a rocket ship, build whatever he needs to build in order to solve the problem and to satisfy the needs of the people. Sometimes he knows how to make a mess. So I got inspired to leave poetry. And I said, well, I want to do something to help the Honorable Elijah Muhammad build a nation. So I decided, well, I'm going to be a teacher. So I changed my major to education. And I got in that and I found out it was so easy. There wasn't no challenge in it at all. So I said, well, Ben, you know how we are sometimes. We go from one extreme to the other. So if this is the easiest thing in the world and I get bored with that, well, what am I going to do? I'm going to go to the opposite extreme. What's the most difficult thing I can think of? And I thought medicine was the most difficult thing in the world. Later on, I found out that's not true. That was just some of the propaganda that I had been exposed to. That's all right, brother. That's all right, brother. It's not bothering nobody.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
It'll dry up. So I was nervous, though, because
white folks had tested me in college, and they told me that I only had a 3% aptitude for science and mathematics. 3%. They said I had a 97% aptitude for humanities, arts, and music. And based on that information, I had stayed away from the science curriculum, like that was a plague or something. I don't want to go nowhere close to mathematics, nowhere close to science, nowhere close to physics or astronomy, nothing like that. Keep me over in the music and the poetry and the literature and that aspect of things, because I thought that's where my talent was. But then I was on the horns of a dilemma, because white folks were saying you don't have any aptitude for science and mathematics, but the Honorable Elijah Muhammad said Islam is mathematics. Mathematics is your nature. And I had to decide, who did I believe? Did I believe white folks, or did I believe Allah's messenger? And I said, I believe the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, but I'm going to write him first to make sure. And so I wrote him a letter asking him if medicine was something that a follower of his should be concerned about or interested in. And he wrote me back, and I'll never forget it. He said, brother, that's nice when the messenger of Allah calls you brother. He said, brother, we need everything in the building of a nation. You know what you are qualified to do. May Allah bless you with success. And so I took that as inspiration, and I changed my major to pre-med, figuring, well, I'm going to have a hard time with chemistry and physics and all of this stuff, and if I fail, I'm going to get back up and I'm going to, persevere, and I'm not going to let them hold me down. But Allah, as my witness, I never stumbled one time. Never stumbled. Even though in the past it seemed like I couldn't understand such scientific subjects, but then I wasn't a Muslim. But now I had been exposed to the knowledge of myself. I had a spiritual foundation on which I was standing, and so I was looking at things from a different perspective now. I had an objective in mind. I was trying to help the Honorable Elijah Muhammad to build a nation. And also I had the love and the support of my brothers and sisters throughout the nation. And so when everybody found out that I was trying to go to medical school, see, the Muslims are so wonderful. They didn't wait till I graduated, even from college, much less medical school, to start calling me brother doctor. When I was still in undergrad school, just talking about being a doctor, they started calling me that. And there were many times, brothers and sisters, where I felt that I just didn't have what it took. I felt like it would be better off for me just to drop out of sight, just drop out of school. But then I thought about the believers. And I said, no. I said, I can't let them down. They actually believing in me. They actually think that I can do this, and if I dropped out, it would really hurt them. Yes. And so that's what kept me going. And then I got in medical school, and I did very well in medical school. And Dr. Jordan and I attended the same medical school. Not at the same time. He was a few years ahead of me. But we heard about him even then, that there had been a brilliant black student who had passed through there. And we were inspired by his success to be successful ourselves. And then, of course, the whole idea in what I was doing was I wanted to be qualified for the hospital that the Honorable Elijah Muhammad was building. He knew that we could never be qualified for independence if we had to take our sick and injured people into the hospital of the enemy, where they could experiment on us. People today, they come to me, well, brother doctor, should we allow our children to be married? What a question. And see, the Muslims, they're so suspicious
The white people. They know he's a grafted devil who by his very nature is made to destroy the black man and black woman and black child. That he by his very nature has no love for black people at all. And so how can there be a proper patient-doctor relationship between a black person and a white person who's a devil? Where's the trust? So they always come to me, even today. Well, my doctor told me so and so and so and so. Should I do it? Because what they say, I don't trust him. But it's a terrible dilemma to be in, because who else are you going to trust? You don't have anything of your own. We're trying to get something of our own. We were trying at that time to let white folks open up the medical schools to increase the enrollment of black medical students and nurses and technicians like that. But if they increased it and doubled their enrollment, it would still not be enough to satisfy our need. Do you realize that there were more black doctors in practice in the United States of America in the year 1900 than there are in 1991? That's because they shut down most of the black medical colleges. And now we really just have Howard and Meharry and Morehouse is struggling and Drew is struggling. But in reality, we need 15 to 20 medical schools just for the education of black doctors and nurses to take care of the health needs of our people. And who's going to do that work? Who's going to lay that foundation? Don't you understand? It's people like you and me. It's not that you are that today or you even see yourself as that today. I'm using myself as an example. I wasn't one of these little bourgeois kids growing up with the idea I'm going to be a doctor one day. I never thought that I would be that. I never even conceived of it. It was only after I was in the Nation of Islam that the idea came into my consciousness that it was possibly something that I could do. Dr. Koish, the director of the Kenyan Medical Research Institute, you should read the interview that's in the Final Call newspaper. And then we need to generate a movement in this country to bring Dr. Koish to the United States so he can present his scientific findings to the world. But here's a black man from a poor country in Africa, raised in the rural part of Kenya, where he had to run to school every day, 10 or 12 miles on foot every day in order to learn to read and to write. What was the expectation for him at birth? The expectation was he was going to be a herds boy, herding cattle, herding goats, doing that kind of work. But yet he was born with the potential to be one of the world's greatest medical scientists. But in order for him to realize that dream, he had to be willing to run 10 and 12 miles a day to get to school and run 10 or 12 miles back home. And do that for year after year after year after year after year until he could win a scholarship that brought him to Harvard University. And it's just like brother said, he didn't go to Harvard so he could run away from his people. He went to Harvard so he could learn everything that these people had developed in their science and then take that back home and use it for the benefit of his people who were suffering and dying needlessly due to a lack of knowledge and due to the lack of professional care. Yes. We ought to bring Dr. Koish to the United States. so he can present his findings to his scientific peers in the medical and scientific forums of this world. It should be sponsored by Howard University, Meharry University, and all of the great black institutions that we have. And we should actually compel NIH and the FDA and all the other prestigious bodies to receive our brother. We should generate that kind of force and power. Because if Dr. David Koresh was white, his picture would be on the cover of Time and Newsweek and every magazine that circulates around the world. If Dr. Koresh was white, he would have already received the Nobel Prize for medicine. Because what he has developed in the Kenyan Medical Research Institute, the use of low-dose oral human interferon in the treatment of is every bit as significant as the development of penicillin. Yes. It's every bit as significant as Louis Pasteur's development of. As a matter of fact, in my opinion, it's greater than any of those previous accomplishments. But because he's a black man, you haven't heard anything about it until the Final Call newspaper went there and broke the story. I'm talking a little bit about personalities. So we ought to bring Dr. David Koresh here so you can see what a real black scientist looks like. And you need to bring your children to where they can look at a real black man. I mean, he's a real black man. See, sometimes in Africa, when you go there talking about, well, I'm a black man from America, they look at you like you crazy. Say you look more like a white man. He's talking about you a black man. They'll show you some black people. You want to see some black people? They got some black people there. And Dr. Koresh is one of them black ones. Real black. I'm talking about Congo black. You understand what I'm saying? The kind that's supposed to stay back and never come forward. But I'm saying to you that out of deepest, darkest Africa has come the brightest hope in this AIDS epidemic. And we need to highlight that. We can't expect white folks who are really behind the conspiracy to destroy tens of millions of people, billions of people. Why would we expect them to bring our brother forward and give him the honor that he's due? Don't you understand that they are angrier than hell at our brother because he is foiling their plot? Look at this. See, this is a medication called Immunex. Says each tablet contains 200 international units of natural human interferon alpha. How you like that? See that? Yes, sir. That's a 30-day supply. You just have to take one of these a day if you're infected with any. See, I went to the white folks' medical school. Yes. They told me that you can't cure a viral illness. That's why ain't no cure for the common cold, because it's caused by a virus. What do they tell you if you go to the doctor and he tells you that you got herpes? What does he tell you? There ain't no cure. So it might get better, but you never get well. How long am I going to have it, doc? For the rest of your life. It could break out at any time when you least expect it. Got hepatitis? Got it for life. Sometimes they can come up with a vaccine So you give polio to children because it prevents them from getting the disease polio, which is caused by a virus. But if the virus gets there first, hey, it's too late. He ain't gonna help you. So we were all educated to believe there's no cure for any viral illness. And since AIDS is a viral illness, then by definition, it is considered to be incurable. But there's nothing impossible with Allah. Well, Dr. Muhammad, are you claiming that this is the... Oh, no, I couldn't scientifically prove that tonight. This alpha interferon that is derived from human tissue cell cultures, meaning that it's a natural product, it's not manufactured, synthetically. It has no toxic side effects. It's been used in more than 3,000 cases in Kenya. Not one reported incident of a toxic side effect. The only two known side effects is that it increases your appetite and it increases the sexual drive in males. But of course, the fact that it increases your appetite and you're infected with the AIDS virus, that's not really an unwanted side effect. Because usually you have lost so much weight that it's good for you to be eating everything in sight. Are you listening?
Yes, sir.
Well, how effective is it? Sister, I got it. See, when you go to Africa, you're supposed to bring back some big game. You're supposed to have something. See, if you go to Africa and don't bring nothing back, the people don't think that you ever been there. Well, bring something.
That's right.
Let me give you the story. And let me say, in all honesty, there are some things that I'm not saying tonight. Minister Farrakhan asked me not to say certain things at this point. Because, just as you and people elsewhere who will hear about this, who pick up the final call and read it, they're overjoyed at the news. But don't you know George Bush is boiling in his rage? Here he's out to commit genocide, and here's some black niggas from America and some black niggas in Africa. They throwing a monkey wrench into his shadow plots. So they're angry as hell. So there's things that really should not be said. But I want to say enough that gives somebody some hope. Because when I told Minister Farrakhan 4 years ago that I didn't see no hope, I was telling him what I believed to be the truth. I didn't see no hope then, but I see hope now. And I know that in the management of this disease, hope is also a medication that is every bit as valuable as any chemical substance that you could take. Because Dr. Koesh, he said that we've had a 97% success rate in the treatment. I said, well, what happened with the other 3%? He said, there seems to be some relationship between their emotions. That where they were very, very depressed or ashamed, then they didn't seem to respond. And in half of the cases, they actually stopped taking the medication because they had already given up hope. They had already bought into their own death. And so once the mind buys into something, then the mind will bring about that reality. So since they had already accepted death, then death was inevitable for them. But where there was yet hope, then in those cases, they got an immediate response. You're saying, well, you're just going by what he told you. No, I'm talking about what I saw. There was a black man there from America who had to be carried to the hospital. He was so weak, he couldn't walk under his own power. They just laid him up in the bed. We got there after he had received 2 of these tablets. He had just received 2 tablets. We asked if we could go visit him in his room. We got to his room. The man was up and gone. He was out walking around. Came in a little bit later, and he was looking good. And we asked him, well, what do you think about this, Kimron? He said, it's saving my life. And his mother was there, and she was overjoyed because she thought that her son was probably going to die right there in Africa. But this was their last best hope. So they came up with the money. There was a sister that we met from Washington, D.C. We had read in the Afro-American newspaper the day that we were leaving Washington, a story appeared that a woman with AIDS was on her way to Kenya. So Brother Wali said, as soon as we get to Nairobi, we're going to look her up. And we found her in Aga Khan Hospital. And she had just started on therapy. And when we saw her, I mean, she was looking good and feeling strong. And you see her picture in the Final Call newspaper. LaShawn Evans. And she is going around to everybody that she knows in Washington, D.C., telling them about what happened to her under We went out in the bush. We didn't just stay in the hospitals in the big cities, but we went out and met some of the bush doctors. Now, I don't mean to say it like that, but because there are some very, very heavyweight people. I have a great deal of respect for the Kenyan people. That kind of competitive spirit and strength and determination that you see in the long distance runners that are from Kenya, where you see them working hard and they become the world's best. That's the spirit of all of the Kenyan people. Everywhere you go, you run into people like that. They're not silly like some of us. Walking in downtown Nairobi, it ain't like walking in downtown LA or Washington where you have a whole lot of silly acting people laughing and joking and carrying on. What you got to laugh and joke about? I was in Nairobi. I thought they were going to be laid back. They ain't laid back. They'll lay you back if you don't get the hell out of their way. They got a pace of living in Nairobi. It's similar to the pace in New York. You better not be lollygagging at the corner when the light changes. Them people moving out. And don't go there in your casual dress. They're walking around in business suits. Just like the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. He warned us against wearing dashikis and stuff like that. He said, that's not what the modern African is wearing. The modern African is wearing a business suit. And that's exactly what I found. The only people I saw walking around in dashikis and that kind of stuff was black people from America. I'm not saying there's nothing wrong with that. If you want to wear that, you like that. And I think Africa should appreciate its own culture more. But what I'm trying to point out to you is these people is modern and right down to the modern of everything in science and technology. And they're seeking to push ahead in the world. They're not hanging back talking about what white folks won't let them do. Dr. Koish said that he didn't really believe that AIDS was much of a problem until one of his lab workers came to him and asked, do you think I have AIDS? And then later they tested him and they found out that he had AIDS. And then they had other samples on this same man that they took back all the way to 1982. And they found out that he had been positive for AIDS all the way back to 1982. And that's when Dr. Koish began to realize, hey, this was a kind of a problem that had been slipped in on Africa without anybody paying attention to it. and that there were already millions of people who had been infected while everybody was sleeping.
That's right.
Nobody was aware of it.
That's right.
People walking around thinking that they were healthy, already infected with a deadly. Same is true here, isn't it? Because I bet most of you in this room, when did you get your AIDS test? Have you been tested yet? You're walking around with a sense of security like the white man didn't get you. If you've been having sex with anybody in the last 10 or 12 years, you're at risk. And you need to go get tested to find out what your status is, so that you will know how to handle yourself in a responsible way. You owe it to yourself and you owe it to your loved ones to know what your HIV status is, and they need to know what theirs is too. It's not just healthcare workers that we need to know the HIV status of. If we had a decent, civilized government, the government would make it mandatory for everybody to be tested so that they would know how to take care of those who are already infected and know how to protect those who as of yet are uninfected. But we don't have a decent, civilized government. We have a savage government that is retreating into irrationality, into a dark age. Matter of fact, their agenda is an agenda, and they are actually trying to bring about the millions of their own citizens. Yes. Do you believe that?
Yes, sir.
These same people who are advocating a reduction in world population of 2.7 billion people, they are also advocating a reduction in the domestic population of the United States. They have said that the ideal population for the United States is 100 million. Where the latest census shows more than 250 million. So what are they going to do with the excess 150 million people? So this accounts for the reason that they are reluctant to test people. They don't want you to know what your HIV status is. They want you to go blindly to your... So you have to take matters into your own hands. Find out what your status is. And then once you find out whether it's positive or whether it's negative, then take the appropriate steps. The world has changed because of what one little black scientist was able to do in a lab in Kenya. White folks are telling you it ain't no hope. White folks are saying to you, take AZT. Why should you take something that is known to be poison? No wonder they're advocating it for you. So many of our people who are suffering and dying, they're not really dying due to the direct effects of the virus. They're dying as a direct result of the so-called treatment. Well, the world's different now. Not because a lot of people did something, but because one man did something. That's what I'm trying to get at. It don't make no difference how many people know the truth. As long as one man knows it and is willing to act on it, that's enough. That's all it takes. This is something I learned from Minister Farrakhan. When he goes somewhere to speak, he don't care how many people are there or how many people are not there. He'd teach just as hard for one as if it was 1,000 or 10,000 or 100,000. He said to me one time, see, brother, I don't know who that one might be. That one that's there might be the one that's going to unlock the whole thing for us. So you got to teach him just as hard as you would teach 1,000. Say, how many Davy Koreches does it take? It only takes one. I'm not trying to say that he worked by himself. No, there's a whole team that works with him. But I'm trying to make a principle here that it's important what each one of us does. That we have the capacity as human beings to make a difference no matter what they have decided the future is going to be. Even one of us can decide differently. We can decide and determine differently, and we have the will and we have the power and the greatness with us. Even as individuals, we can change the whole thing around. And so just the fact that I can walk in America and I got something from Africa, that changes the world, doesn't it? Doesn't it? Somebody said, well, how can you get it? Well, that's another fight. I smuggled this. They smuggle cocaine, don't they? You mean if wicked people can smuggle cocaine, can't the righteous smuggle something that is good? You mean to say I'm supposed to go along with the wicked rules and regulations of the devil and allow our people to die? No, Dr. King taught us better than that. He told us to disobey unjust laws. The FDA knows about this. The NIH knows about this. Dr. Koish made an official announcement. This was a molecule that was found either in nervous tissue or in immune tissue. And so he reasoned that there should be a way in which to administer it directly into the nervous tissue. There had been some animal research that showed that viruses that infect animals, cattle, cause a nasal discharge. And when they test the nasal discharge, the running nose of these cattle, they find that it's high in interferon. And so he again reasoned that maybe there's something in the nasal mucosa or the oral mucosa, that is related to the immune system in a special way. There had been work done in the Soviet Union that showed that interferons can be absorbed by the dendritic processes of nerve cells. And there's a rich supply of these cells in the mouth. And so Dr. Koish believed that he was on to something. And then some work was done by a veterinarian working in Kenya where he found that low doses of interferon, and he put all of this together in his reasoning to come up with a formulation of a low dose oral. He got some cells that had been cultured at Johns Hopkins University from a black woman who died of a certain kind of leukemia. And those cells had been cultured and preserved. And when challenged with a certain kind of benign virus, these cells produced 9 of the subtypes of alpha interferon. Alpha interferon is really a family of chemicals. Some researchers say that it's 20, others say it's as many as 28 different subunits. But these cells that Dr. Koish was using produced 9 out of the 20. And this was the powder that they had developed and used. But somehow or other, it activates the nervous system. It's believed that maybe these molecules are conducted by the nerve cells directly into the brain, and that somehow the brain, which is intimately related to the immune system, causes some kind of cascade effect. But the results are very clear. We have to be scientific in our understanding. Emotion won't get the job done. Just getting excited, just getting mad won't get the job done. We got to have knowledge. And then we have to have the wisdom to know how to apply our knowledge. So they treated that first man, the government outlook. We have to be scientific in our understanding. Emotion won't get the job done. Just getting excited, just getting mad won't get the job done. We got to have knowledge. And then we have to have the wisdom to know how to apply our knowledge. So this man, the government minister, for 6 months. And by that time, he was completely symptom-free. His T-cell count had gone all the way back to normal. And the most amazing thing of all, his AIDS test, which had been strongly positive, converted to negative. and they could no longer detect in any of his body fluids, nor could they even detect the antibodies to this in his serum. And that didn't occur just once, but it occurred. We asked Dr. Koish about that. Well, how do you explain that? He said, I'm just a scientist. I'm just telling you what I observed. I can't explain it. All I'm telling you is what I observed. And it's been verified over and over and over again. And he's challenging the scientific world. You take my data that I have developed and you try it yourself. He got into a big fight with the World Health Organization because they wanted to take his and then develop their own protocol for the use of it. He walked out of the meeting. So I'm not going to have anything to do with it. He said, do it my way and you'll get results. I don't know what we'll get if we do it your way, but my way works. But see, you know white folks, they don't like to take no instruction from black people. They don't care how right you are. You're just too damn black. They don't never see themselves coming up behind no black man or some black woman. But that's how they came up, isn't it? What did they know in the beginning before we taught them? And doesn't the book teach you and me, as it was in the beginning, so shall it be in the end? And so if the black man and the black woman is the mother and father of civilization, the mother and father of science and medicine and all of the arts and sciences that make civilized life possible, if that's the way we were in the beginning, that's how we are returning in the end. So, brothers and sisters, this is very good news. It is something to shout about. Even though we're talking science, we can get happy and get the Holy Ghost if we want to. It'll be worth it to get the Holy Ghost this time. So you go and you tell somebody, well, what y'all gonna do with this tape? You gonna lock it up in the vault? No, sir. You gonna make it a secret? No, sir. What y'all gonna do? Sell it at a real high price? No, sir. I hope not. Come on, teach it now. Come on. Go spread the word. Don't you know that there's people out there that if they don't get some hope by tonight, they'll die by tomorrow? I've already experienced that. A man was trying to get to me 2 weeks ago. He heard that I was back, I had something, but due to circumstances and time, I couldn't meet with him soon enough. And you know, the way we think sometimes is crazy. We take life for granted. I told the man, I'll see you next week. Well, next week didn't come for him. Now, that's a heavy weight, isn't it? Yes. How you think I felt when my phone rang and they're telling me, well, you know that man that you was going to meet with next week? He didn't make it. So now, you're responsible for what you know. The lives of real people, not just numbers in somebody's statistical survey, but real live people, somebody's mother, somebody's father, somebody's son, somebody's daughter, somebody's mother, somebody's father is in the crux of life's ultimate challenge. And if God blesses us with an answer to this, see, this is what Minister Farrakhan told me 4 years ago. He said, brother, if Allah permits something to happen, and you have to believe that, don't you, that if Allah didn't permit these devils to make this, never could have made it. Allah encompasses their plan in his plan. Because there's something of spiritual necessity in this AIDS epidemic. It's compelling people to reflect over their lifestyles, their habits, their behaviors. It's making people more responsible. It's making them more caring and more loving. It's bringing us together, both the living and the dead, because we even have a bond to those who have passed over on the other side, but we remember them and we are thinking about them and concerned about them and still striving in their name and in their memory to do something for those who yet remain alive. So God, who permits these things to happen out of his love and his mercy, he always provides an answer from himself. He always puts the solution to the problem somewhere. The minister said, but the thing about it is, brother, he says sometimes he puts it in the strangest places. So think about white folks. Here we got something that'll save anybody. But where do they have to come to get it? You can get it. Now they put out lies years ago. They put out lies years ago saying that the Muslims hate all white people. Well, some of the Muslims do hate white people. But some of the Christians hate them too. Because they have done enough to cause anybody to hate them. But that was never our teaching. You can't put that on Elijah Muhammad and say he made you hate white people. That's right. No, our teaching has always been truth. Freedom, justice, and equality. If you don't believe it, you just look on the Muslim program, what the Muslims want, what the Muslims believe. Look under point number 12 of what the Muslims believe. We have always believed in a universal brotherhood of men, without regard to color, creed, or caste. That's always been our teaching. Now, of course, we know and recognize a special problem exists between black and white. And so our major thrust has been at our own people to make something out of our people who have been destroyed. It wasn't white people who have been destroyed in the last 400 years. It's our people who have been destroyed. So it's our people who are in need of resurrection, not white people. It's our people. So our major emphasis has been on our own people. After all, white folks have already rejected Muhammad and rejected Jesus and rejected Moses. So we ain't gonna waste our time trying to teach them today after they rejected their prophets and worthies of yesterday. You understand what I'm saying? Yes, sir. So they can get it, but they got to overcome their racism. They have to overcome their pride and arrogance. They got to get life this time from the source they got it from the first time. So, brothers and sisters, I want you to think about what you heard. Not just from me, but everything that you've heard all day long. And I want you to realize that you're a specially selected group who is now made responsible and commissioned by what you know to go on out to help others who don't know what you know. They're not responsible. Even the doctors in the hospitals, the universities, even these big-time politicians that think that they are the high and the mighty in the land, they're not held as being responsible as you are, because you know, and they don't as yet know, although they're learning pretty fast. I learned yesterday that one of our brothers sold a paper to a black man that works at NIH, and he took the final call up into the labs in NIH and was showing it to all the doctors up there, and it caused pandemonium, caused arguments to break out up there over whether or not they should accept this. Well, accept it and live. Reject it and die. This is what the Honorable Alim Muhammad taught us years ago. So now we see it coming into practical, manifest reality. So there was much that I wanted to say, and time won't permit me to accomplish all of that. I just want to close by reading a verse from the Holy Quran that I love this verse. What is it? It's chapter 31, verse 20. I love this verse. I just about always read this because it says something about the greatness of you. You've got to learn to believe in yourself. You have got to understand the position that God has placed you in. He didn't place you in a position of weakness, helplessness, hopelessness, powerlessness, but he placed in you power and authority over everything. If you don't read the Holy Quran, you can find the same concept in the Bible. You read there in the Bible that God gave man, who was created in his own image and likeness, power and dominion over the earth and everything in the earth. Don't you remember reading that? Everything flying, everything crawling, everything walking, everything swimming. God gave you power and dominion over all of it. It means God has given you power over everything if you could only realize it. But you have been in the hands of a devil who has made you not only disbelieve in God, but made you disbelieve in yourself. So you think now that you have to be the victim of everything. Everything is more powerful than you. Cigarettes is more powerful than you. Cocaine got more strength than you. Food got more power than you. Sex got more power than you. Everything, the white man got more power than you. But that is just not the case. So now listen to this verse and think about it. It's in the form of a question. It's asking you whether or not you see something. And you have to think deeply, and then you have to tell the truth, because the question is not being posed by me. The question is being posed by Allah. And you don't want to be a liar and tell Allah a lie. He's asking you a question to bring out of you the truth of yourself. The question is as follows: see you not that Allah has made subservient to you whatever is in the heavens and whatever is in the earth, and made and granted you his favors complete inwardly and outwardly. And among men is he who disputes concerning Allah without knowledge or guidance or a book giving light. So the question is plain. God is asking you, don't you see that he has made subservient to you, placed under your power, under your authority, whatever is in the heavens,
whether it is the sun, the moon, and the stars, they are not powers in and of themselves that are greater than you. When they showed us the Roots movie, that was the thing that I disagreed with most. When they held the little baby up and said, behold, the only thing greater than you. No, even that starry expanse of the universe is not greater than you. You are a universe unto yourself. Right. And if you ever come to knowledge and mastery of the universe within yourself, then it is proof that you have become a master and a god over all of this external universe. Because in actuality, it is the same thing. He's asking you, don't you see that I have made subservient to you everything or whatever is in the earth? The rivers, the oceans, the wind, the rain, the powers of nature, the forces of life and death itself. Don't you see that I have made them all subservient to you? And of course, most of us, we don't see any such thing. We don't see nothing like that. That's why you got up this morning and opened up the newspaper and read your horoscope. You want to see what the alignment of the stars is, because then that will determine what's going to happen to you. No, it's not a matter of what the stars' alignment is. What's your alignment? How have you aligned your desire and your will and your spirit and your actions? Have you put them in alignment? Because if you line up your desire and your will and your knowledge and your word and your deeds in a straight line, then that's more power than you'll find anywhere in the starry heaven. And certainly some little microscopic particle called a virus don't contain more power in it than God has put in you. And so out of the mind of the black man has come an idea born of creative goodness that is more powerful than the creative wickedness of devils. For every wicked idea that can be conceived by the devil, who has weak brains, than those who have been blessed by God with more powerful brain power, we can conceive a more powerful idea to destroy their idea. Don't you forget. That it was not Moses and Aaron who cast down their rod first. No, it was Pharaoh's enchanters who cast their rods first. Then Moses and Aaron cast their rods, and the rod of Moses and Aaron ate up the rod of those wicked enchanters. So we have seen what Bush and Company has cast. We've seen what the wicked scientists of this world have cast. They've cast death. Now it's time for the black nation to accept their challenge and let us cast, let us throw down, assured that that which we throw down in the name of God is going to eat up what they have cast. So in the name of God, let me greet you in peace. Assalamu alaikum.
Dr. Alim, I mean, that was powerful. I was sitting there listening to the brother, and I heard him on a videotape for the first time this week. But just sitting there, that brother is powerful. And I mean, the information that he has brought to us tonight, we can't take that lightly. I mean, you can't go home and go to sleep. The brother talked about the videotape. We got to share this information. This could save our lives. In fact, this is going to save our lives. But what are we going to do? He gave us a couple